To those who are joining the webinar just now, a very good afternoon and good evening to you. I'm Alistair Burt, the chairman of the Society. I'm just waiting until more members have gathered to officially launch the session this afternoon. So that's why everything is quiet at the moment, but thank you very much for joining, and I will formally launch the occasion in just a couple of minutes. I'll just give it one more minute to 12:35 UK time before we begin. To those joining, just another minute, and then I will welcome you all to this Emirates Society event this afternoon. My name is Alistair Burt. I'm the chairman of the Emirates Society, a friendship society between the United Kingdom and the UAE, which was begun in 2018 by His Highness Foreign Minister Sheikh Abdullah of the UAE and the UK Foreign Minister at the time, Jeremy Hunt. I'm delighted to welcome colleagues to the event today, which is going to cover the Mars Mission, the Hope Mission. I have here a copy of the Eagle magazine, which some in the United Kingdom, even some abroad. So Ian Blatford is raising his hands for my birthday in May 1955, when space travel was all the rage and Dan Dare captured the imagination, and still now we are captured in our imagination by the events that happen in space. So we're particularly pleased to welcome again for an update on the Mars Hope Mission, Her Excellency the Minister, the Director of the project, and Sir Ian Blatchford from the Science Museum. I will introduce each individually in a moment after His Excellency the Ambassador, Mansour Abahul, the UAE Ambassador to the United Kingdom, has introduced Her Excellency first. But before we do that, just a word on the format. Her Excellency, the Director, and Sir Ian are going to say a few words about the mission itself, what's going on at the moment, what has happened on the way, what we expect next, and to put it all in context. Then there'll be an opportunity for questions. Please use the Q&A function, which is on your Zoom system, and let us have your questions. I will read out the questions. I think it'll be quicker and easier to do it that way. So please let me know who you are when you type in your question, so I'm able to give you and perhaps your publication full accreditation. And we will complete within the hour, and I think that will make for an enjoyable and informative occasion. So without any further ado, perhaps I could ask His Excellency the Ambassador to introduce Her Excellency the Minister, and then we can get underway. Your Excellency, it's very good of you to join the Emirates Society this afternoon. Very good to see you. Do launch us on this afternoon's adventure.
Before I introduce the Minister, I'd like to say a big thanks to you, Alistair, as Chairman of the Emirates Society, for all that you're doing to take this organisation from strength to strength. I know I said this at the last event that we held, but Alistair, your hard work and dedication to the Society is all the more remarkable given you're currently recovering from a major surgery. And it's terrific to see you looking so well and fully engaged with the Society. So thank you so much for everything you're doing. And thank you for asking me to introduce Her Excellency al-Amiri to the Society. It is a great honour to welcome one of the UAE's most exceptional talents to talk to us today. Her Excellency is not only the Minister of State for Advanced Technology, where she is working to ensure advanced sciences make a major contribution to the development of the UAE and its economy. And for the purposes of today's talk, she is also the chair of the UAE Space Agency and Deputy Project Manager of the Emirates Mars Mission. She was critical to ensuring the Arab world's first interplanetary mission was executed successfully and remarkably rapidly. Her extraordinary career shows how the UAE is not just a place where brilliant people work at the top of government, it is also a place that puts science at the heart of our national mission. She is going to bring us up to speed on the latest from the Emirates Mars Hope probe, which we hope will soon be beaming back crucial data from the Red Planet. Your Excellency, over to you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency Mansour, for this introduction, and thank you, Alistair, for hosting us again about the Emirates Mars mission now that we are 8 days away from arrival to Mars. It's been almost 7 years now of painstaking work on our part. It's been quite a challenging journey so far, but from the perspective of how this impacts the Emirates overall and how does that streamline the development of the nation overall, especially when we're talking about the advent of technology into industry. The Emirates Mars mission has taught us a mechanism by which we are able to develop talents and capabilities, transfer them from different levels of expertise. And more importantly, today, it allowed us to experiment how to develop small businesses that are focused towards catering major industries. The space industry down the line over the course of the next 5 years with the current plans that we have will further be fostered into the creation of new private sector within the country. So that's one of the major lessons learned from this mission, which is how do you develop capabilities and how do you transfer those capabilities then on to the private sector and allow the creation of new businesses that then impact the economy. The other aspect of it has been the development of science. This mission is truly one of the foundational missions by which we were able to put together engineers and scientists to work on designing of a mission. And to have a mission that's going to be in orbit for 2 years and in a further 2 years of operation that is available to scientists today in the Emirates, where they can utilize the data from their own mission to be able to analyze the atmosphere of Mars and contribute globally. But more importantly, the data from this mission is vital to our overall human understanding of the evolution of the planet Mars and the evolution of its atmosphere and the reasons for atmospheric loss. The journey since launch in July 20th has been a series of roller coasters, but it's been a successful venture so far. The spacecraft is operating as designed and as expected. And we've tested and Imran, our project director, will definitely attest to what the work that the team has undergone over the course of the last few months to prepare the spacecraft for one of the most challenging times that it's going to face when it goes into orbit around Mars. Done all the scenarios that they can possibly do, understood exactly how the spacecraft operates, tested the commanding sequence that's going to the spacecraft. And we are today comfortable with the level of preparation and rehearsals and oversight that has gotten us to the point to the command sequences that is going to command the spacecraft and allow it to think for itself, respond to any challenges and any sequence that it's going to face while it's going through its Mars orbital insertion. We as a nation understood from day one when we started working on this mission that only half of missions succeed, especially during this critical part of getting into orbit around Mars. And for us, the success has always been the journey. It's been the experience developed, it's been the capabilities developed, it's been the expansion of possibility for the youth of our region, for the children today in the Emirates, by which it has opened up a vast area by which they are able to contribute. And a lot of areas that for us, when we were growing up, was not something that seemed feasible to work in. Today, our children are able to work in areas as challenging as space and others. And we are looking forward to the next few days. I think it's very nerve-wracking for the team. At the moment, it's a wait and see game at the moment until we get to our arrival sequence around Mars on the 9th of February.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for setting us off this afternoon, this evening, and much appreciated. Thank you for your insight both into the history and also the ambition of the project. It's now my very great pleasure to introduce Director of the project, Omran Sharaf. Omran is the project manager of the UAE's first mission to Mars, the Director of Programs Management Department at the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center, a UAE space agency. He graduated in 2005 from the University of Virginia with a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering, and obviously is crucial and pivotal to the success of the mission going forward. We were delighted, Omran, with your previous presentation and look forward to hearing from you now with what's going on at the moment.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me again. As mentioned by the Minister, it's been busy times for us, especially after launch. Throughout the past 7 months, there's a lot of things that took place, which include critical operations, such as the trajectory correction maneuvers that we were planning of doing, which is something that is usual in deep space missions. The plan was to conduct 7 of them. However, currently we are actually conducted 4. The 5th one we decided to skip because I mean the spacecraft seemed to be on the right trajectory, and there was no need to do the 5th one. And soon we should be making a decision on the 6th trajectory correction maneuver. We are approaching a very important milestone in this project. If it's not one of the most important ones, I would like to say the riskiest point in this project. When we launched the spacecraft, there was that risk. However, the launcher that we used was an MHI launcher that had heritage with long success rates. And the role of that launcher ended 1 hour after launch, when the spacecraft separated from the launcher. And basically, we relied on the propulsion subsystem that was developed by the team to navigate and move the spacecraft towards Mars and to perform the trajectory correction maneuvers. And it's the same one that we'll be using during the Mars orbit insertion. For 27 minutes, we'll be firing the thrusters within that subsystem. And it's going to be the first time we actually use it in space for that long. If I may remind you of one of the main requirements that the team received at the beginning of this project when it was first announced, was that we had to build it and not buy it. And this is why this is considered for us a very, very important, not just strategic milestone for us as a nation, but also as a way to see the results of the work that was conducted by the team. It's very simple because it's very difficult to test such systems also on Earth. The propulsion system, for example, if we tested it on Earth, it would have caused a damage to the thruster system, given that the environment that it was designed for is for it to function in a vacuum in space and so on. So it would have significantly degraded the system if we performed the full-on test here. So there was a limitation. And this is why this is considered for us a very critical moment in the project. We'll use 6 delta V thrusters to slow down the spacecraft's speed and put it into orbit around Mars. The firing will start at 7:31 p.m. 7:31 p.m. Dubai time, and basically start at an altitude of 2,400 kilometers, roughly above Mars's surface, and it will end 27 minutes later at an altitude of around roughly 1,400 kilometers above Mars's surface. During that process, we will be using not just the delta V thrusters, but all the other supporting attitude control subsystem components to keep maneuvering the spacecraft and put it in the right orbit. In that process, we will reach the lowest altitude we reach is around 1,000 kilometers almost. And that's going to be almost halfway through the process of reducing the speed of the spacecraft. And basically, we need at least 4 thrusters to be able to put the spacecraft safely into orbit, minimum, out of those 6 thrusters. There's going to be a roughly 11 minutes delay in communication. It's going to be it's going to be a one-way communication. So for 2-way communication, it's going to be around 22 minutes delay. However, for one-way communication, you need 11 minutes. And that process will basically be performed fully autonomously. The commands will be uploaded into the spacecraft 4 days before the MOI. And basically, the spacecraft will have to conduct that operation on its own and deal with any anomalies on its own and handle it on its own. And the reason why it's been designed that way is because of the delay in the communication. So you cannot really know what's happening real time, and you won't be able to have any real-time interference. So that's why it was very important for us to design a smart system that's capable of performing this phase on its own. It's one important milestone in the project. However, this project has many different objectives. It was not just about reaching Mars. It was not about putting a spacecraft around Mars. It's about creating a disruptive change and impact, as was highlighted by the minister. To see a shift in the priorities of the Emirati youth and have them more invested in science and technology, to create a research and development oriented culture amongst the youth, to support the creation of an advanced science technology sector in the UAE, and to see that disruptive change in multiple sectors. And this project is more of a catalyst than actually just a space project of putting something around Mars and just receiving science data. So science is extremely important. The science is novel. The science was one of the main drivers of this mission, but there's much more to it. And this is one thing that we'd like to also highlight, and is that this is an important milestone, but there's a lot that's been achieved by the team the past 6 years that the government was seeking through this mission.
Mr. Director, thank you very much indeed. You highlight some of the practical difficulties of dealing with a situation where, of course, there's a time lag in the signal going out to Mars, and you have to manage that. You also fairly encapsulate the fact that the riskiest part of the mission is now coming up, but are also able to say that beyond the detail of the mission itself, the disruptive, challenging effect in the UAE is very strong in relation to science and technology. To set this now in a wider context, could I ask the director of the chief executive and director of the Science Museums Group in the United Kingdom, Sirian Blatchford, to have a word. Sirian was appointed in 2010 to the Science Museum Group, which includes, amongst others, the National Railway Museum in York, much beloved by all of us, and the Science and Industry Museum set in the heart of the north of England in Manchester. Sirian had a career in finance before moving into our great national institutions and has worked with the Royal Academy of Arts, the V&A, and now the Science Museum Group and the Science Museum in London. I know, Sirian, you were really interested in the mission when we had our first meeting some months ago, having tracked its progress and knowing the critical stage it's about to enter in the next few days. How do you see it, and how do you look forward to what comes next? Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here. In fact, I'm particularly delighted because, let me just get the speaker 1 second. Particularly delighted after I last saw you just before the launch. So many scientists all over the world asked me if I knew about it. And I said, not only do I know about it, I've met the 2 people who are central to it. So it's nice to be ahead of the curve. What I'd quite like to do is ask Omran some questions about the mission, some practical questions, and then go to the minister about some big picture questions. And I wonder whether we can just start to try and paint a picture for the people listening about just how risky and amazing the process of going into orbit is. Because first of all, by the time the Hope mission arrives at Mars, it's probably traveled about 180 million kilometers. But also, I wonder if you could say something about the speed, because my own science team think that for a large part of the journey, it's been traveling at something like 121,000 kilometers per hour. So to slow down as it reaches Mars is an extraordinary achievement. But then also I have a very beautiful visual image in my mind, which I wonder if we could discuss, which is that when it arrives at Mars, it doesn't go straight into an orbit, does it? The way I would describe it is a huge elliptical shape that eventually becomes a perfect orbit. So I wonder if you could just say a bit more about the technical challenges of slowing down after such amazing speed, and how you communicate and make sure that the orbit is achieved. And also tell us a bit more about over what time period you actually achieved the right orbit.
Thank you so much. It's a question that everyone asks us about and excited about. So yes, so one thing I want to make clear, when we say 121,000 kilometers per hour average speed, we say it not relative to anything, like in space. Yeah. So just because I know the scientists will come up with different questions. So it's basically, yeah, so 121,000 kilometers in space. By the time we reach there, of course, there's going to be the effect of the gravity around Mars, the effect of the sun's gravity, and the whole, like, basically solar system would have affected the speed of the spacecraft. But we need to take it down to 18,000 kilometers per hour. And that's a huge, basically, reduction in speed. During our trajectory correction maneuvers that we conducted earlier, the firing was just for a few seconds, a couple of seconds here and there to fix the direction. However, now we just firing minimum for 27 minutes, nonstop. So it's putting a huge load on the whole system in general. And basically all of them need to be functioning at the same time. So you have to have the communication subsystem working, providing the contact. You have to have the onboard fault protection systems alert and aware of anything that goes wrong and kicks in if a flag comes up. You need to have your communication system providing the data to Earth, the telemetry data. The thermal subsystem controlling the temperature. It was extremely important for us to, for example, control the temperature of the propulsion subsystem and the thrusters to be able to have it perform the way it's supposed to be performing. Especially that we'll also be pumping hydrogen gas into the tank to maintain the pressure level within the tank, which is actually cold. So you need to make sure it doesn't freeze. And at the same time, you have the attitude control subsystems with the gyros and the reaction wheels all working and maintaining the altitude and putting it in the right way for it to enter the orbit the correct way. So what's going to happen at that process, which I mentioned earlier, in which we at 2,400 kilometers altitude, is that we actually the purpose here is to have Mars gravity grab our spacecraft. And the way that we design the entry point and the flight control software that we have on board is in that process, it puts it in an elliptical orbit. We won't be able to confirm it right after, let's say, MOI, as in like how to say, detailed analysis of the orbit we are in. However, we will be able to confirm the success of MOI operation. And about maybe within 24 hours, we should be able to know the exact detail of our capture orbit, which is supposed to be basically at its lowest point, 1,000 kilometers, and its highest point around 49,000 kilometers. We will stay in that capture orbit for about 2 months maximum. During that time, we will commission the spacecraft, the subsystems, calibrate the scientific instruments, and make sure that everything is functioning well and the way it's supposed to, and that we have the system make sure that the system would stand the load that it had to go through during MY. Once that happens, we're going to transition into our science orbit, which is basically also an elliptical orbit, which gives us that unique coverage that we want. Again, at its lowest point is going to be around 20,000 kilometers, highest point around 43,000 kilometers. It's going to take us about 55 hours to have a full circle around Mars, and gives us that holistic view of the Martian atmosphere. And to do that, we'll have to perform, again, certain maneuvers, which we call basically the science, transition to science orbit maneuvers to achieve that. And we'll have to conduct, I mean, the exact number I cannot tell now because we'll have to wait until we reach Mars, and based on our initial assessment of how close we are to what we call the sweet spot within the orbit, based on that, we'll decide how we will plan our maneuvers and transition into our science orbit. That delay in communication is definitely, we are feeling it, we're seeing it currently, even as we are cruising towards Mars. And it's going to become even longer as we reach Mars and as Mars moves further away from Earth. After actually we complete the 27 minutes firing of our thrusters and hopefully succeed in achieving being captured by the Mars gravity and being placed in orbit around it. So I would like to say maybe 6 to 8 minutes afterwards, we'll go into what we call the occultation. So we go into the other side of Mars, in which basically the spacecraft will have no contact for about 10 to 15 minutes with Earth, because there wouldn't be any like line of sight contact with Earth. We'll be on the other side, the eclipse side of Mars. So basically that's a challenge by itself. So right after we complete that big maneuver, we'll have a few minutes to make sure that everything is fine, and then we're going directly into eclipse and not having any communication for about 10 to 15 minutes, which is scary. So that took basically the challenge level even to the next level. And then of course, something that's totally not related to technicality, we have the situation with COVID that we have to deal with now, in which we need to make sure that we have the team members properly socially distanced, we have backup teams in place, limit the direct interaction between team members. In such a critical time, you would need team members to be next to each other. In such a critical time, you need to have the face-to-face conversations. However, we need to deal with the current reality, and we need to find ways to be more effective. So we had to reduce the number of team members. Certain people will be working from the center with enough distance between them. We were placing people at different, rooms and different areas. Some will have to work from home and basically monitor the spacecraft from home. But we had to take these extreme measures just to make sure that we are effective in our operations and hopefully provide the support that the mission needs to successfully complete that phase.
Wow, that was a wonderful answer, and also shows why when I meet people who work on space programs, they get very annoyed when people just celebrate a launch and they say, you know, the launch is the easy part. And exactly. I have to say, you're almost convincing me that you'll come. I have many more questions for you, but I'll save them for later. I want to, if I may, go to you, Minister. Many questions are bubbling in my mind. By the time Hope arrives, there will already be in orbit or on the surface 8 other devices from other missions. And you've now joined this extraordinary club. Just looking at the countries involved, America, Russia, Europe, India, and China. And that puts your achievements into a perspective in terms of how amazing it is that you've arrived in this elite group. And I suppose my big question for you is, I know all the objectives you have for technology and education back in your country, but also if you look ahead 10 years at the work of NASA, European Space Program, the Chinese, and also Elon Musk, missions to Mars, be they scientific, are going to be ever more prominent. They're going to be big ethical issues. Potentially within 10 years, we'll be bringing samples back from the surface of Mars, which raises very big scientific questions about contamination and biosecurity. And then the whole Elon Musk agenda about using Mars, for minerals or maybe a staging post. So I wonder, have you yet had a conversation about the UAE role at the table in terms of the much bigger agenda about the Earth's approach to Mars.
Yes, we've been parts of several conversations across space agencies for several years, actually, with regards to protection of outer space, the whole, let's say, thought process behind if there's ownership in space, and how do you go about private sector accessing space, and what sorts of benefits, if we're talking about mining and minerals, what sort of benefits do you get there? How do you ensure that there's no contamination between different planets or any object that we as humans land on? With more people accessing different surfaces, be it the moon or Mars, how do you ensure there's no cross sort of pollination between different experiments and between different sites that different nations have been sending their data for? These are ongoing conversations with the international community. We continue to believe that space is for all. It is not owned by any one nation. We are, at the end of the day, humanity living on a planet that's amongst this overall system. Do we today have an answer of how to approach it? There's several approaches that are currently on the table. I don't believe we today have an answer on how to address that. Perhaps for me, one of the biggest sort of stark realizations when I started working on the Emirates Mars mission almost 7 years ago now was the planetary protection process and mechanism, especially for spacecrafts that have been sent by different government agencies into space, is very well versed and understood to ensure that there's no contamination from Earth of other planets. And we ourselves as a country have ensured that our Hope probe does not contaminate Mars in any way, and we followed planetary protection. I think down the line, we need to continue our conversations on the following: ensuring that access to space remains open for all. Whatever measures are put into place with regards to the protection of space, and at the same time with ensuring that space is available for all, does not limit people from accessing to space. At the end of the day, the most difficult thing that we can do to nations is to inhibit their ability to access space and only allow it for a few niche nations that have the capabilities to have such advanced technologies to be able to maneuver around them. To ensure that space continues to be a realm for peaceful use and the continuous endeavor towards peaceful use, and to what would solve a lot of the problems, especially with regards to resource and discussion, is the increase in cooperation when it comes to space. And it's not only cooperation between nations, but rather cooperation between nations, between companies, between individuals, anyone who's able to access space. On the other hand, I know the context of space debris, we've littered much of the surroundings around space. I still am yet to see a mechanism by which addresses this again without inhibiting people from accessing space. But something that's quite interesting that started rising is you no longer need to own a space asset. And you no longer need to own a scientific space mission, especially if we're talking about today. Maybe the case wouldn't have been the same 2 or 3 or 4 years ago, but today you don't. The amount of data that's just generated from spacecrafts that are currently doing either extensive studies around different planets, and I'm talking about populated planets such as Mars that has objects around it and on the surface, or be it around Earth, where we've got a whole lot of assets out there that are producing more data than we're able to analyze and process. There's a lot of services and analytics that could be derived from it. And there's a large value proposition for actually starting companies based on it that are providing those services, that are not particularly selling data from space, but rather selling information extracted from data for space for various applications using space as your back end. I do believe, at least in the course of the next 10 years, that there's ample opportunity especially for small nations and for small players, to advent into space, especially if they don't have an existing space program. A few years ago, that wasn't possible. You needed to have a vibrant space agency that would then transfer a lot of the knowledge that it had invested in over decades to the private sector and privatize a lot of the work that they're doing through contracts that they give to that private sector. Today, there's a new gap in the market that players are able to enter into, and players are able to enter into in different ways. And perhaps on this mission, the COVID experience, what Omran spoke about, the fact that today we can have for a planetary exploration mission, people sitting at home on their laptops, monitoring parts of the portions of the subsystems within the spacecraft, that's great. When we were in the launch site, we didn't have access to the commanding facilities and the screens. We actually observed the success of the deployment of the solar panel on the laptop of one of our engineers that was connected to our ground control, and we had it then and there on a laptop, seeing the exact telemetries that people at the command room or command and control room were seeing. This, at least for me, is a nice trigger of what's possible. What we thought before was not. Today, we had to have it up and running. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to have a fully staffed, full resources command and control room for vital parts of this mission.
Wonderful. I have so many questions for both of you. I would just one comment and then I'll pass back to Alistair. I mean, I couldn't agree. There's something still mesmerizingly wonderful about what's being achieved here. And the example my own colleagues were giving, Doug Millard, who's our space curator, was saying that there's been a debate for many years about the role and position of hydrogen in the atmosphere around Mars. And he was saying, isn't it wonderful to think that rather than it being just a debate based on theoretical discussions, that actually one of the key things your mission will achieve is data. And I think that's the thing that we talk about the engineering, but there's something so beautiful about two things. One is this data will actually now exist, but also it's shared in a way that is invisible to most audiences. That's a comment. If I carry on asking questions, I'm sure Alistair will be cross with me, but I may get in at the end with some more technical questions. But back to you, Alistair. Of course. Can
I actually add to that? I was at the Mars International Conference about a year, time, I think 2020 has distorted time for me. It was sometime, I think maybe in 2019. And one of the scientists was speaking about results of the global dust storm that happened during that Mars year, and how far out the dust storms lifted up into the atmosphere higher than what they thought before. And something that resonated for me was what she said was that there were gaps in times because of the observations were not consistent, that they're not able to tell a full picture on why it's extended. Yeah. And for me, sitting in a conference that's about Mars with scientists from around the world, and so a lot of the things that they pinpointed we were not able to assess, the Emirates Mars Mission will provide data for.
Exactly.
And that for me resonated, at least that the team at least did a good job. Even when we first started, we did not have background in Mars science. But the fact that the Mars science community has gotten together very well through various fora, we were able to extract the right gaps in this knowledge to be able to fill it. And I'm really glad that this is something that's not beneficial for us. It's beneficial for our understanding of that planet.
Great, perfect.
Thank you very much, both Ian and our guests. It's interesting, a number of questions that are coming in are about the cooperation side of things. And I'd like to start with one from our friend Peter Mitchell-Moore, who knows the Gulf and Abu Dhabi very well. And Peter has asked, can we expect that the Abraham Accords will be mutually beneficial to future space probes by the UAE and lead also to space-related joint ventures between Israel and the UAE in both the civil and defense fields? I don't know whether there's a technical answer from the director yet or a political answer from the minister about how the Abraham Accords can increase cooperation with Israel on civil space missions.
Since we signed as a nation the Abraham Accords together with Israel, there has been conversations both at their Ministry of Science and Technology and also within the Israeli Space Agency with the UAE Space Agency. We are both as nations committed to the further exploration of space. We are both small nations with small space programs with small space agencies that are the two primary players in the space sector within the region. And for us, that is already a partnership, already provides us with a bed by which we're able to enter into the space industry collaboratively. What we are looking at is the same objectives of being able to establish a private sector ensuring that our business environment allows for the space sector to flourish, ensuring that the infrastructure is existent from it. What I hope to have with this collaboration is ensuring companies can then procure from each other parts and subsystems and further develop business for the entire region.
Thank you very much.
Also,
yes, please.
Minister, one thing also I'd like to highlight, since day one in this project, the direction that we received from the government was that we'll be sharing the data from this mission openly with everyone, with no restrictions. So, I mean, even though the past few months witnessed the signing of the Abraham Accord, but the thing is, from our side, we've always had the intention of sharing with everyone. We always had the intention of being open with all research institutes when it comes to the data that this mission will be collecting and providing.
Thank you very much for that. I'm open to more questions if people would use the Q&A space on Zoom. I think we've got space for more questions. I've got one or two already, but always very happy to see more. A second question, again, on a similar subject, but with specific reference to the Artemis Accords. This is from Afram Chowdhury, who is the head of international policy at the UK Space Agency. And he says, congratulations on the Hope mission, an incredible journey for the UAE and their space ambitions, which we would all echo. And he goes on, given the plans for NASA's Mars Perseverance rover mission and China's Tianwen-1 Mars orbiter and rover, I'd be grateful if Her Excellency and indeed the director could outline their views on the need for even greater international collaboration on space programs with specific reference to the Artemis Accords. And I took the opportunity in a quiet moment just to refresh my memory of the Artemis Accords, which of course all of us on the call know so well. They are an international agreement between governments of participating nations in the Artemis program on the principles for cooperation in the civil exploration and use of the moon, Mars, comets and asteroids for peaceful purposes, and is of course grounded in the Outer Space Treaty of 1967. So with particular reference to the Artemis Accords, Your Excellency, a little bit more on the collaboration you've already outlined.
So the Artemis Accords specifically spoke about, like you said, the further advent of the peaceful use of outer space, but with specifically mentioning two objects of interest in space for humans, and that's the moon and Mars, and ensuring that we continue to operate across these two celestial bodies in the correct manner that was intended with the use of outer space, as I iterated in the previous question. Well, we're talking about international collaboration. International collaboration will continue to grow in space, especially with the entrance of new players into the space exploration realm. Collaboration also existed even behind a lot of these missions. There was always collaboration between different space agencies, be it on instruments or on the science teams. Our science team is made up of international scientists from around the world. That's the nature of space exploration. And we continue to be part of that, and we will continue to be part of the overall international scape when it comes to exploration in space, especially when when we're talking about space science.
Thank you very much. I don't know, Director, if you have anything to add in relation to that. Okay, thanks. I have a further question, which will be of interest to many of us from our friend Jeremy Williams, who brings a different dimension to this. He says this: some years ago, I sat next to Buzz Aldrin at dinner in London with his family. That's a thrill, Jeremy. I think all of us who love space and the idea of space would love to get an opportunity just to sit next to the great man and talk to him. Sat next to Buzz Aldrin at the dinner in London with his family. He said he was shortly to visit the UAE to play a part in the planning of the UAE Mars mission to mark the 50th anniversary of the creation of the UAE, which of course is the story of this year. I explained, says Jeremy, the structure of the UAE and other things, and he asks, how did his visit go? Your Excellency?
Like you said, everyone wants to sit next to Buzz, somebody who has stepped foot on the moon and has had a remarkable journey in the space sector. He provided us with just general insights with regards to exploration and what he first sees as the importance of humans going to Mars, and what are the building blocks towards us getting to that? If I talk within the perspective of the science that the Emirates Mars mission has been developed with the team, if you take it from a tangent perspective, you're getting a full analysis on the weather system of Mars everywhere on Mars throughout an entire year. That helps us to better understand climate overall, and it helps us to understand the role that climate plays in atmospheric loss. That furthers our understanding of a planet if we want to step foot on it one day as humans, how to go about doing that. And this is just one piece of the overarching puzzle of Mars that this mission is filling in.
I just would like to highlight also like the last point that the minister just highlighted. It was basically, so the science side of the mission was developed by the team members. And in close consultation with the MEPAC members, and we have members of MEPAC who are actually part of our science team. And as part of our efforts as a nation to spread awareness amongst the youth and encourage youth to go into these areas, so we had, for example, visits from certain figures like Buzz Aldrin, and also, for example, Neil deGrasse Tyson, and others, that we took them around to inspire and encourage the young Emiratis to go into this field and give them their perspective on things also.
Interesting. Hookie Walker, our former ambassador, had also just asked that question to say whether there's evidence yet of young people in the Emirates picking up on the importance of this mission, and you've answered that, and no doubt they are and will do so even more. Sirian, could I go back to you perhaps for a final question before I ask His Excellency the Ambassador to wrap up with a thank you? You said you had one or two more in your bag for the Minister and the Director.
Well, I just wanted really to go back to the Director just for a very simple question, which is so obviously on his mind, but actually we should just dwell on, which is that when you get into orbit, how long are you going to stay there? Just remind us of how long you plan to dwell around the planet.
Actually, before I answer that question, if I may, there's a correction I need to make. I didn't notice actually something, but the team member highlighted this mistake that I said that we're putting hydrogen into the tank. Actually, I meant helium. My apologies. Yes. I don't want to lose
The minister is looking slightly worried.
It's helium. I meant helium. I promise I meant helium. So yeah, so how long we're going to be staying in orbit? So we designed the spacecraft, the lifetime of the spacecraft that we've designed is basically 4 years. But we hope it lasts longer. The main mission is supposed to take us 2 years, Earth years, to be able to, which is equivalent to almost one Martian year, to be able to answer all the science questions that we have and achieve, hopefully, the science objectives. And then, of course, before that we reach that point, we hope to start exploring and thinking about what the extended mission would be. It's very difficult for us to say at this stage what the extended mission would be, because it all depends on when we reach, how well we do, how much data we collect, are we able to actually answer all of our scientific questions and investigations within the first 2 years of the mission. So that will determine what kind of science questions we'll be answering, but also the status of the spacecraft, the fuel that we have, the status of the instruments, the subsystems, and so on.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I think that's been a great session. I'm really very appreciative. Those of us with memories of how it used to be in the old days, I was listening very carefully to Her Excellency talking about how people anywhere can keep up to date with the mission, with new technology. You can use your laptop and you can almost be in the control room. You can see what other people are doing. I remember for the moon landing mission of 1969, when I was 14 years of age, you could buy from the newsagents the manual of the maneuvers of the spacecraft as it went out. And I followed that religiously right the way through the days. And that was all you had, but you had effectively their manual with the maneuvers, the mid-course corrections that His Excellency, the Director, referred to earlier. But now, of course, a little bit like Flight Radar 24, you can put yourself more or less in the cockpit and see what's happening. This is an extraordinary thing. And as someone who was captivated by science as a youngster, and space, although it wasn't ultimately the direction I went in, to have that information available. I think that boys and girls all around the world will take so much from this mission and learn so much, which will be so very, very important, and has been emphasized right from the beginning. The importance of women at the heart of this mission as well will do so much in so many countries where still we need to see STEM subjects taken much more effectively by states to their younger people to make sure everyone benefits. So this has been a fascinating session. I'm really very, very grateful. I know that His Excellency would like to wrap up with a few words before I close it formally. Your Excellency, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you, Alistair. What a fascinating discussion. On behalf of the Emirates Society, I'd like to say thanks again to Her Excellency Sarah, Imran and Sir Ian for giving up their valuable time today to talk to us. I think they were brilliant contributions and really underlined what an astonishing project the Emirates Mars Mission is. It's not just a landmark achievement for the UAE and the Arab world, but for everyone interested in science and human progress. The Hope probe has helped transform the UAE science base, and if all goes well, it will produce real tangible scientific breakthroughs. Her Excellency Sarah and Sir Ian explained to us the Hope probe promises to transform our understanding of the Martian climate, particularly through accessing data and possibly our understanding of Earth's too. As we heard, one of the purposes of the project is to inspire young people, particularly young Arabs, to get involved in science. And after hearing from Her Excellency Sarah and Imran today, with great passion and eloquence, I'm more confident than ever that this will happen. In what has been otherwise a tough period for the world, your hard work and dedication has proved something that everyone can celebrate. So on behalf of the Emirates Society, many thanks again for talking to us today and for everything you've done so far and will continue to do so in the future.
Ambassador, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for joining us for this, and a very warm thank you to all attendees. And already some warm comments coming through. Bradley Jones from the UAE UK Business Council says thank you very much to all speakers for a truly fascinating webinar. And I think he and His Excellency the Ambassador spoke for all of us. So of course now we wish the mission very well in the next few vital days. I can't think anyone who's been on the call today will be missing anything of it as we go forward. We wish it the very greatest success. Thank you to everyone who's joined the Emirates Society this afternoon for the conversation. There will be more events coming up and people will be emailed in relation to that, but it'll be very hard to match the quality and the expertise of what we've heard today. So Your Excellency, Minister, Director, Sir Ian, thank you so much for your contribution and your questions, and Ambassador, from all of us at the Emirates Society, thank you very much indeed for your participation and time, and we wish you all very well. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Take care. Have a great day. Thank you.
Wave as we do these days on these things.